How the fuck is everyone doing today? It's April 11th, 2020. I'm going to rank all of Metallica's studio albums today. Metallica, much like Iron Maiden, are a band that I have a lot of experience listening to, mostly because Metallica are the band that got me into metal music 10, 12 years ago. And it's just been an upwards journey since then. For me, I spent a lot of time listening, especially to these early Metallica albums. So I'm going to go through them all, share my thoughts, and let's just get right into it. Kill 'Em All, their first album, I'm going to put in A tier because Kill 'Em All is genre defining. It started thrash metal. It was fast, aggressive, loud, raw, and angry. And it was incredible. Lots of amazing thrash songs on this album. We got The Four Horsemen, classic song, great riffs. No Remorse, very underrated. One of my favorite songs on the album. It's got some great guitar riffs and kind of a catchy chorus, and it just kicks a lot of ass. Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth. Metallica decided to bust out a 5-minute bass solo on their debut album, and it's an incredible bass solo. No one can cover it properly the way Cliff recorded it. No one can do it justice. Incredible bass solo. Other songs, Seek and Destroy, classic thrash song, always will be. Overall, Kill 'Em All, solid start to finish thrash album, great songs, and it started thrash metal, and Metallica have a long way to go from here. Ride the Lightning, I'm also going to put in A tier. Ride the Lightning, I can see how some people would put it in S tier, and I can see how some people would call it their favorite Metallica album. But for me, it has a few flaws that I'm going to keep it in A tier. And the main flaw is the song Escape. I do not like that song. I think it completely brings the album down. In my opinion, Escape is just not a good song. It's a bad song. I'm just going to say it. And to me, it brings this album down. But a lot of songs on this album are incredible. Like Fade to Black. Sad, depressing song, but also has some heavy riffs and incredible guitar solos in Fade to Black. We have Ride the Lightning, heavy song, very heavy song. It's about electric chair execution, and James's voice on these earlier albums has kind of like a more high-pitched, kind of like shrieky, squealy, aggressive sound. I think it's before he learned to actually sing, but I actually prefer his voice on these early albums. Like later on, like Black Album onwards, I think he actually took some singing lessons and his voice maybe got a little more clean and proper technique. And to me, that the older Metallica sound with his old raw voice was better to me. And that's one thing that I love about Ride the Lightning is James's voice sounds awesome on Ride the Lightning. Fight Fire with Fire, it opens with Fight Fire with Fire, and it's kind of has that really like slow, merry, kind of jolly guitar intro, or it's like all just happy and jolly, and it sounds so chill. And then all of a sudden, a brutal as fuck guitar riff breaks in, and then the whole band just start thrashing out. And in my opinion, Fight Fire with Fire is probably the heaviest song Metallica have ever recorded. Like, it's so heavy, so brutal. It's so fucking heavy. And every other song other than Escape on this album is great in my opinion. Trapped Under Ice may be a little bit of a filler song, but it's still a pretty decent song. Overall, Ride the Lightning, I can see how some people would maybe say it's their favorite album by Metallica, but for me, I'm going to leave it here. Master of Puppets, to me, is an S tier album. Master of Puppets is in my top 15 heavy metal albums of all time. It's not in my top 10, but Master of Puppets, every song is great on Master of Puppets. It's got a few incredible songs. The title track, awesome song, awesome guitar riffs. It's got that awesome kind of slow instrumental interlude near the end, and lots of transitions in that song. The choruses are good. Great song overall. The theme is I think it's about drug addiction. Like, the lyrics are like, chop your breakfast on a mirror, take me, you will see, more is all you need, dedicated to how I'm killing you, Master of Puppets, I'm pulling your strings, all that stuff. Pretty obvious what the theme is about. And I mean, Orion is on this album. Orion is, I think, probably their best instrumental. It's got that incredible bass section where those awesome bass lines come in, and it doesn't even sound like metal at that point. It's more of like just like a classical, I'm not going to say jazzy, but some of those bass lines just sound like classical, but still heavy as fuck parts of that song too, and lots of transitions again with that one. The Thing That Should Not Be, some people would say, is weaker, but like a weaker song by Metallica, but I disagree. I still love The Thing That Should Not Be. Damage Incorporated, great way to close the album. It's fast, it's heavy as fuck, it's aggressive. Leper Messiah, underrated song, very heavy, great guitar riffs. Overall, I mean, if someone's never heard Master of Puppets and they listen to Master of Puppets, I think a lot of people would say, wow, this could be one of the greatest metal albums of all time. Like if someone listened to it without hearing any of the songs before in their life and they just listened to Master of Puppets, I think they'd be completely blown away with how amazing all the songs on that album are. Sanitarium, I mean, Sanitarium's a great fucking song. Do I even need to mention any more about this album? And Justice for All, I'm going to put in S tier along with Master of Puppets. They're kind of neck and neck for me with the greatest Metallica album of all time. Most days I'm going to say Master of Puppets is slightly better, but some days I just love And Justice for All, and I'm just in the mood for something a little bit more heavy, a little bit more dark than Master of Puppets, and Justice for All just has so many classic, great, dark, heavy as fuck, thrashy songs, like The Shortest Straw, Dyer's Eve. Dyer's Eve has incredibly quick double bass patterns and just heavy. To Live Is to Die, another great instrumental. I think I was taking the city bus one time, and the fucking city bus driver was blasting To Live Is to Die while he was driving the bus routes. So that was pretty fucking awesome when that happened. Anyway, other great songs, the title track, And Justice for All. I mean, it's got that great little clean guitar riff and then transitions into those riffs. And then Lars kind of has that drum fill with like the 4/4 beat, but then he like puts in the toms as he plays it. Sounds sick. And Justice for All, a lot of people complain about the production. I don't think the production's bad on And Justice for All. I mean, people say there's no bass guitar. I agree with that. The bass is a little bit quiet in the mix for sure, but in my opinion, the kick drum, the double bass patterns, it helps a lot to add the depth that's needed, that the bass is lacking, like the bass guitar is lacking. The double kick patterns fill out the songs a lot on this album. And the production, to me, is not as bad as people make it out. I think it's just one of those things where everyone knows that there's no bass on the album, so a lot of people who have no fucking idea what they're talking about just regurgitate, yeah, And Justice for All mix sucks because there's no bass. It's not that they're listening with their ears and actually like trying to hear it. It's that they've heard it from everyone, so they just want to be part of the pack and just repeat it blindly. That's what I find a lot. I mean, the mix, in my opinion, really isn't as bad as people say. And Justice for All, just awesome sound to this album. The songs are great, and I could put it on and listen to the whole thing to this day, and I don't get sick of any of the songs on And Justice for All. Black Album, I'm going to put Black Album in A tier as well. I mean, these were Metallica's greatest albums, these early ones. They are going to start going downhill with these other ones, of course. But Black Album, a lot of people will say that it's not that great because this is when Metallica went a little more mainstream. And I agree with that, but in my opinion, it's a good mainstream. Black Album is definitely still like pretty heavy. The songs are still pretty heavy, and the sound is pretty heavy. It's a little bit commercialized, a little bit mainstream, maybe a little bit. I mean, Enter Sandman, it's overplayed, but at the same time, the first time we all heard Enter Sandman, we loved the song. It's just now we've all heard it 1,000 times. We're getting a little sick of it, but Enter Sandman is a great song. It's just been extremely overplayed, and it's kind of losing the charm it had. But other songs, Sad But True's got that great groove to it, and it's like a slow-paced Metallica song. This album is not really thrash. it's just more of just a standard heavy metal album. It's not really thrash metal like these early ones was hardcore thrash, but definitely changed their sound a lot on Black Album. The production is very polished and very well produced and clean, but a lot of great songs. Wherever I May Roam is awesome. God That Failed has got that great bass line and got the great chorus to it. Some songs maybe I don't like as much are My Friend of Misery. Not a huge fan of that one, but I mean, The Unforgiven is a great song, and it just, Metallica's versatility came out a lot on Black Album. So, I mean, there's a lot of songs I'm not mentioning, of course. There's quite a few shorter songs on the Black Album, but as a whole, Black Album to me is still very solid. Load. So I'm actually gonna put Load in B tier. Metallica changed their sound completely, and I know a lot of people didn't like it. I'm not a huge fan of Load and Reload myself, but in my opinion, Load is not quite as bad as Reload. Load does have some better songs. Metallica got a lot more bluesy. Like, this is kind of what I would describe blues metal. Like, it's still heavy. It's still, metal and distorted guitars and loud and aggressive to a point, but the guitar riffs are very bluesy and slower tempos, and it just sounds like a different sound. Like, even so, these first four were very thrashy. The Black Album was still heavy metal, but maybe a little more mainstream. Load changed their sound completely again, and now it's kind of this bluesy hard rock metal hybrid type sound, and it's not horrible, but it's just not the Metallica we all know and love. And I think that's why this album gets a lot of hate. I don't hate it, but I do prefer their older ones. But there are some great songs, like Bleeding Me, I think, is on this one, and The House that Jack Built is a great song. The House That Jack Built. I mean, 2x4, Ain't My Bitch. They're pretty solid bluesy rock songs. What's that other amazing one? Well, not amazing. I think King Nothing is on this one. I like King Nothing. It's got a good chorus. Overall, Load, it's not as bad as a lot of people say, but it's just not the Metallica we all know and love. Reload, I am actually going to put in C tier. Like, I almost want to put it in D tier, but I think there's a little bit on Reload that keeps it at least in C tier. I'm not going to completely put it in the hot garbage bin. It's got Fuel. Fuel is a great song, of course. I like Attitude. I like Prince Charming. But then there are some songs like, what's that one? Fixer. A lot of people like it, but it's just so long and just a little weird. Where the Wild Things Are, that song I just hate. I hate that song. Hate it. The Memory Remains is an awesome song, of course. I mean, but there are a lot of other just kind of mediocre songs on Reload, and there are some moments where it's just very, very cringy. Like, I already talked about Where the Wild Things Are, but I find that song just kind of cringy, like with the Wake Up Sleepy One part of it. And I don't know, what's that one song? Not The Memory Remains, but it's that other one where he sings with like a really weird voice, and I don't know, it's just cringy. Reload, lots of cringiness, but there are a few good songs that kind of keep it in this C tier. And now we have Saint Anger. I have to put this in the hot garbage bin. I mean, this is going to be like universally agreed upon, and some people are going to say Saint Anger is overly hated, and I can see a little bit of good things in Saint Anger, but overall there are too many problems with Saint Anger. James's voice sounds horrible. Like, James's voice does not sound good. I know he was going through rehab and all that, and I know the band were kind of at a breaking point. I saw the documentary, but I mean, that doesn't stop us from critiquing the album, right? Like, we have to be fair and critique the album and put those things aside. James's voice doesn't sound good. The guitar, the production doesn't sound great. The distortion guitar tone sounds really bad. Lars's snare drum sounds like a fucking trash can lid. Like, literally he turned the snares off and just ping, 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 ping is all you hear. Those are the frequencies you try to cut out of a mix, Lars. Those are the ringy frequencies you try to take out of your snare drum. Not take the good part of your snare drum out and only leave the annoying, ringy, buzzy fucking sounds. Come on. That snare drum ruins the album. I mean, there are some good songs. Some Kind of Monster has some good riffs. What's that one? Secret Window, I think is what it is. I like that one. Shoot Me Again, I Ain't Dead Yet. That's a decent song. It's a pretty solid song, but a lot of the songs are long. And like I said, the guitar riffs are okay at best, and the tone's not great, and the production's not great, and Lars' snare completely ruins the album, and James's voice just sounds like he is half dead, to be honest. I'm sorry to say that, but it's just what it sounds like. So, Saint Anger, Metallica's worst album. Now we have Death Magnetic. I'm going to put Death Magnetic as a B tier. A lot of people hate Death Magnetic, and I mean, in my opinion, Metallica kind of came back to their older sounds a little bit on Death Magnetic. We got All Nightmare Long, which is a great song, great heavy song. I mean, we got The Day That Never Comes. I mean, it's an okay song, but it's a poppy mainstream song, and I mean, I'm completely sick of that song at this point. I mean, a lot of those really poppy, commercially songs don't stand the test of time, and The Day That Never Comes is one of those where it's like, I've heard it enough and I just hate it these days. It's not something that I can go back and listen to anymore. But I mean, what are some other good songs on Death Magnetic? That Was Just Your Life is a great song. My Apocalypse, it's an okay song, got some good riffs. The Judas Kiss, not a huge fan of the Judas Kiss. The Unforgiven 3, like, it has like that 2-minute build up, and it sounds like it's just gonna be an incredible epic song, but then I feel like when James's voice kicks in, it kind of disappoints a little bit. The Unforgiven 3 just sounds like it'll be so great as it builds up, and then I mean, just doesn't live up to the hype, in my opinion, that the first couple minutes of the song kind of brought on. And then there's some other problems with Death Magnetic, of course. I don't know how many of you guys know what the Loudness Wars is. I'm sure a ton of you do, but the Loudness Wars is basically a time in producing records when companies thought louder is better because louder generally sounds better to the human ears because the frequency response or whatever it is. But that's the reason why we turn our car stereos up, is because loud music typically sounds better to us. So basically the Loudness Wars were companies thought, let's overcompress the sound, and I'm actually going to put up a picture of the before and after compression on Death Magnetic, just of the tracks, and you'll see just what overcompression does. But basically you lose all the peaks and valleys of the sound wave, which creates an interesting sound. It creates dynamics. It makes, especially on the drums, you'll get louder snare drum hits, louder like maybe kick drum patterns, and just a little bit of variation in the sounds, especially on drums, toms, fills in general. So Death Magnetic was the peak of the Loudness Wars, where they over-compressed the fucking shit out of this entire album, and it takes a lot of the life out of Death Magnetic. It sounds very static, very consistent. The volume is very consistent. No dynamics, no louds and softs at all. It's just a very consistent signal, same loudness with everything, just completely overcompressed. Lars's drum fills just sound consistent, the exact same drum hits over and over. The snares just sound exactly the same. There's no loud hits and soft hits, and the tom fills just just the exact same tom tones on all the fills. And overcompression was a very bad thing. And that holds Death Magnetic down a lot, but I don't want to let that be the reason why I'm ranking the album here. It's just something I thought I'd bring up. So now we have the most recent Metallica album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, and I'm going to get crucified. I don't care. I thought this album was incredibly disappointing. The singles that came out were great. Hardwired, the opening song, the title track, great thrash song. Heavy fucking song. Reminds me of some of their older stuff for sure. Moth into Flame was another single that came out. Heavy as hell. I was getting pumped for the album. Moth into Flame is an awesome song. It's got some great riffs, great lyrics, great message to that song. And then the third single came out, Atlas Rise. And it maybe wasn't quite as good as the first two, but I still love Atlas Rise. It's kind of got like a progressive sound almost. It's got some time signature changes and a little bit different from Metallica for sure. I was still pumped for the album after those songs, but I mean, when the album came out and I listened to it and I listened to it and I listened to it, there was one other song that was better than those three. Obviously, Spit Out the Bone is the best song on the album. Spit Out the Bone is one of the best songs Metallica have ever written, and it's probably the best song they've had since, I would say, at least the Black Album. But the rest of the album kind of falls flat to me. I mean, Now That We're Dead is another one that's pretty good. I'll admit that. Now That We're Dead is a pretty good song. It's got some good riffs, got a good groove to it. But then a lot of the songs that weren't singles, kind of in the mid to end part of the album, to me, a lot of them just sounded the same. A lot of them were just too bluesy. Again, kind of going back to the load reload sound, really bluesy. And James's voice maybe a little bit uninspired. The vocal melodies really weren't that great to me. I mean, if you guys want to explain in the comments, like, I know a lot of people like this album. I know a lot of people don't like it as well, but people who maybe love this album and think I'm being a little bit unfair, please comment and tell me maybe why some of the other songs are great. I mean, some of them, Murder One, I don't remember all the names. I mean, to me, just not a super memorable album. And the best parts were what were like the singles that were released, with the exception of Spit Out the Bone, of course. I mean, Spit Out the Bone is awesome. I'll never say that song's not awesome. Incredible song. Absolutely. Anyway, guys, comment your opinions, like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all later.